No, Owen Farrell for England, and Ireland name a pretty strong side for the clash on Saturday. My name's Mark, let's talk rugby. Ireland v England, so this is a Rugby World Cup warm-up game. It's at the Aviva Stadium in Dublin. Its kickoff is 5:30 BST and it's on Saturday the 19th of August. So we will start with a quick look at the two teams, just run quickly through them, and then we'll talk about them a bit more in depth after that. So starting with Ireland, fullback there you got Hugo Keenan, right wing Mac Hansen, centres Gary Ringrose and Bundy Key, left wing James Lowe. Then you got halfbacks Ross Byrne, James Gibson Park, front row Andrew Potter, Dan Sheehan and Ty Furlong. The second row Ty Byrne and James Ryan. Back row Peter O'Mahony, Josh van der Fleer and Keane Prendergast. On the bench then you got Rob Herring, Jeremy Lockman, Finlay Beelum, Joe McCarthy, Caelan Doris, Conor Murray, Jack Crowley and Keith Earls. Onto the England team then. So fullback is Freddie Stewart, right wing Anthony Watson, centres Joe Merchant and Manitou Laggy, left wing Elliot Daly, halfbacks George Ford and Ben Youngs, front row Ellis Genge, Jamie George and Will Stewart, second row Mara Toji and Dave Ribbons, the back row Courtney Laws, Ben Earl and Billy Bunapola. On the bench then Theo Dan, Joe Marler, Kyle Sinclair, Ollie Chesham, Jack Willis, Danny Kerr, Marcus Smith and Ollie Lawrence. So these two teams played in the Six Nations this year. It was 26-19 to Ireland, and that was at the Aviva as well. Definitely Ireland's worst performance of that Six Nations Grand Slam. Ireland didn't feel like they were, kind of clicked at really any point during the game at all. Never really settled into a rhythm, kind of ground out the results really in the end. England, coming off the back of a, record defeat against France, looking to salvage some pride, put in the performance, especially, with 14 players, but never really looked like they were threatening to actually win the game, but still made it very, very difficult for Ireland, and they're going to try and do the same again on Saturday, I think. So we'll have a closer look at the two teams. So Ireland, Hugo Keenan, he's nailed on a 15 bar injury. Mac Hansen, I think the same on the wing, the right wing there. I think he's nailed on. I would have liked to have seen Calvin Nash still involved in the squad. He was released along with, who was it, Caelan Blade, Gavin Coombs and he was Treadwell, and one other person as well was released from the squad. Was it Tom Stewart maybe? There was one other guy anyway was released from the squad back to their province. But yeah, I would like to see Nash involved, just because as kind of an outsider coming in, a younger player in terms of his experience at test level, just to give us something different that other nations haven't seen as much up close. I don't think he was gonna dislodge Hansen on the wing or anything like that. Just the idea that you got someone there who just gives you something fresh. Other wing then you got James Lowe over there. I think he's nailed on as well. Starter in the Rugby World Cup on that left wing. He obviously this season massively improved his defence after such criticism that he got, in his debut season at test level. And, we know what he can give you going forward, but I think the thing that keeps him there and is going to be very hard to dislodge him is that left boot that he has. Not always accurate with it. Sometimes he'll kick out on the full, and sometimes he'll kick to someone who has actually plenty of space to run it back. But still, it's the distance he can get there, and if he can put that distance on it, and we have a decent chase, we're pinning the opposition back, closer to their own line, which is only good. And he's a great exit for us when we're maybe under a little bit of pressure. He can just welly it down the field, and suddenly we lift the pressure. And I think that, that's why he's probably going to be there on the left wing. Centres then you got Gary Ringrose and Bundy Key. So Ringrose maybe got some unfair criticism, I think, about his defence this year. Has missed a bunch of tackles, but we talked about it in the analysis, stats analysis of the Six Nations, that Ireland generally across the board were missing more first up tackles than their opposition, but the cover defense scramble behind was actually a lot better, and it seemed like there was maybe a bit of a tactic there. Not all the time, like sometimes people would just make a line break, but sometimes it would be a case where someone would break the line and Ireland would be prepared for that happening, and they would isolate the person away from their support behind our own line, and then we would turn the ball over. So it looked like that was maybe a bit of a tactic. I'm not saying he's purposely missing tackles on purpose. I'm just saying that the system is set up that if we do miss tackles in the front line, it's not as devastating as it would be to other teams. And again, I'm not saying it's 100% either. People can absolutely, make breaks. You saw, who was it, the Pernod try against us for France, where he just kind of palmed people off and went on to score. So, but still, I think in attack, he was in excellent form this season. Bundy Aki beside him, great serving for Ireland. I do have a little bit worry around him in terms, not as much as Owen Farrell for England, but he does have that, he does have a red card in him now and then. In terms of the way he tackles, just being so aggressive, but you have to kind of accept that risk with a player like that. And Bundy doesn't go out, and neither does Owen Farrell go out to try and hit people in the head or wherever, like knock them out or not wrap in the tackle. As I said, I don't think Bundy is anywhere near that level. But just a little bit worried there. I would have liked to see Stuart McCluskey start this. I think if Bundy Aki and Stuart McCluskey were kind of at a similar level in terms of caps, you could see McCluskey maybe going to the World Cup, because he does give you that ability to be direct, but also, he's got more skills around that as well. I think his passing game is better than Bundy's, and, they both have good offloading games as well. But, this year at least, McCluskey has been better offloading at the tackle than Bundy. But Bundy is a fantastic player, and I'm happy with either of them. I wish all four centres could go, including Henshaw in that as well. But obviously, I don't think they will. I don't think there will be enough spaces, and we're going to see actually a couple of utility players go, the likes of O'Brien going, Jimmy O'Brien going instead. And maybe I think it's going to be McCluskey who's going to miss out. But that's why I wanted to see him get a chance in this, because we know what Bundy can give us. But I guess Bundy deserves a go as well. As halfbacks, then we got Ross Byrne and James Gibson Park. I would have liked it to have been, we got Conor Murray and Jack Crowley on the bench. I would have liked to have been either Conor Murray or even Craig Casey and Ross Byrne together, just for that combination building, because they play at different provinces, or Gibson Park and Jack Crowley starting to give those two time together. Because what I'm worried about is that it's looking now that Crowley is potentially like he's taken to Test rugby like a duck to water, I feel, and he gives you a little bit more than Ross Byrne. Like Ross Byrne can run a back line, and he is a little bit of a steady Eddie. Crowley just gives you that little bit extra, and he shows that he's got the temperament as well, to kick drop goals and stuff like that. So what I'm worried about is that if Gibson Park is the starting 9, and for whatever reason Sexton is unavailable for a game, that they automatically go Ross Byrne just to keep the combination together, rather than maybe Jack Crowley, who's playing better. But that's for down the line as well. We'll have to see, whether that happens or not. But it's just a kind of suspicion I have. In terms of then the front row, we got Andrew Porter, Dan Sheehan, and Tyke Furlong. So Andrew Porter, haven't been impressed with his form this year for Ireland or for Leinster. Definitely a drop off from last season. I feel like it's kind of opposition coaches have done a good job of getting the idea in referees' heads that he has issues in the scrum, and we've seen him penalised a lot this year, both for Leinster and for Ireland. And I think that maybe the Ireland coaches have to do something about that messaging and kind of fix that, because if it's not, then Porter then could potentially be a liability, because I think he's also falling foul of the breakdown at times as well, where I think last year a lot of time where he was getting over the ball and he was winning penalties. Now he's getting penalised for either hands on the ground, or for no clear release, or for supporting himself on an opposition player or his own player or something like that as well. So need to maybe tidy it up a little bit as well, because then if let's say he was giving away penalties at the breakdown and in the scrum, then he's in yellow card territory as well. So kind of worry about that. So I hope that he rediscovers his form and does well. Dan Sheehan, for my money, one of the best, if not the best hooker in the world, certainly around the park. Tyke Furlong, I'm happy that he is starting this one. I could see a case for Finlay Bealham starting, but I think Bealham showed us what he can do in the Six Nations. There's no way that Bealham doesn't go to the Rugby World Cup. I think Bealham will be the backup for Furlong there. Furlong, he hasn't looked fit. He came back against Scotland, was, by his standards, I'm not saying by his very, very high standards, being probably one of if not the best tight heads in the world. I think he was atrocious against Scotland. Against England, a little bit better, but still, you could have put any of the tight heads in the squad in against England, and it would have reached the level of performance that he did. We expect more from him. And when a player is that good, when they're having average games, it's very noticeable. He didn't look fit. I think even towards the end of the season with Leinster, didn't look fit. So I'm glad he's getting this start, because I think he needs that time in his legs, maybe 60 minutes, of test rugby in his legs to get him ready for the World Cup. And then we're going to see Bealham off the bench. The replacement front row, you got Rob Herring there. Generally accurate in the line out, decent scrummager as well. Not as dynamic as either Sheehan or Kelleher, but he's going to do a job, and he is, I think, going to be the third hooker for the World Cup. Jeremy Loughman has been brought into the squad this week, as others have been released. So it's going to be interesting, because I would have thought that the loose heads going to the World Cup would have been Porter, Kilcoyne, and Healy. I think Healy's definitely got to go, because he can cover the entire front row. So with Loughman coming in, maybe it's just cover, and Kilcoyne's position is safe. Personally, I would bring Kilcoyne to the World Cup, but Loughman's going to get a go here, but it probably is just somebody carrying a knock that he's in there. And then Bealham, as I said, fantastic in the Six Nations. I thought Tom O'Toole as well, when Furlong was out backing up from the bench, was excellent too. I would love to see him go to the World Cup, because he's such a dynamic ball carrier. In terms of any other front row, the best ball carrier in terms of in the middle of the pitch, not like close to the line. You've obviously got Sheehan and Kelleher who can get over for tries, but I think Tom O'Toole is the best ball carrier into contact and into traffic that we probably have in the front row in the squad, at least on the evidence of this season. Then you've got second row, we've got Ty Byrne and James Ryan. I think that's probably going to be a starting second row combination there for us. You could argue having Ian Henderson in there for maybe a little bit more bulk, especially in terms of maul defence and stuff like that. But Byrne is really good at that too, and absolute menace at the breakdown. And he could have him at 6, and then you could have Henderson at 4. But then you lose maybe Peter O'Mahony from 6, and I think O'Mahony offers a lot in in the back row as well. So I think the kind of the 1 to 6, well, 1 to 7 there are probably going to be the starters for the Rugby World Cup. Peter O'Mahony, fantastic player for, and also just before, like James Ryan, really come back to form this year. He had his critics who felt that he wasn't following his development path, but he's come back in a big way this year. Peter O'Mahony, the guy is just an absolute warrior, and he does things that you think that he shouldn't be able to do on a rugby pitch. He does have like a big mouth, obviously, and sometimes he can work for you or against you, but again, you got to take the whole package together. Josh van der Fleer, World Player of the Year last year. He's not up to that standard this year, but still, playing really well. Kim Prendergast, is basically, last chance saloon, I think, for him, put his hand up for selection. So hope he goes well. The other replacement, then you got Joe McCarthy, kind of in a similar position, not really one of the favourites to get picked for the Rugby World Cup. He's still in a battle for, those filler positions in the squad. So he's going to have to do well off the bench. I think Caelan Doris probably our certainly best loose forward and probably our best forward this year. So him coming off the bench as well is good to see. Conor Murray, I think he is going to, now the blade has been released, I think he is going to be one of the nines going to the Rugby World Cup. He did really well, I think, rediscovering his form, like lost his place at Munster, but has shown like he's actually improved a lot, I think. And, with that many caps, to be able to do that and kind of reinvent himself, he's sped up his game as well, which, was very ponderous, certainly last year for Ireland, and to see him, and Munster as well, and to see him being able to speed up his play and, even having the odd nip as well, really is very good. Jack Crowley, has really impressed me, both for Munster and for Ireland. He's definitely going to the Rugby World Cup. It's basically a case, between himself and Ross Byrne, who's going to be the backup for Sexton. But then, I feel like that, Sexton is not going to make the entire Rugby World Cup, in terms of he's going to have a knock at some stage, and one of these two are going to have to start at 10. If you look back to 2019, when that happened, we had two decent fly halves there, but I think here now I'd be more confident in either of these filling in for Sexton against either the Springboks or Scotland. Then you got Keith Earls, who's going to be earning his 100 cap for Ireland. Absolutely amazing servant for Ireland. I'm not sure whether he's going to go to the World Cup. He's kind of like, he's kind of similar to Stockdale for me, that the things that he's done in the past shows you that what he can do at the level. There may be other players who are in better form, but he's someone who never lets the team down in green, and I'd be very happy for him to go. Let's then have a closer look at the England team. So you got Freddie Stewart there, fullback. He is absolutely nailed on, I think, to start fullback. I think Anthony Watson as well on the right wing. He just looks more comfortable than the other players who are playing wing for England, and I would certainly start him at right wing in the Rugby World Cup for the big games. The centre combination there, Merchant and Tuilagi, could actually be a starting combination, but England, they could have Manu at 12 as well. You could even have Owen Farrell, you could start Tuilagi at 13 and have Farrell at 12, or you could bring Ollie Lawrence in and shift Tuilagi to 13. There's plenty of combinations there. I think this might be a combination that, if it goes well, that they'll actually pursue in the Rugby World Cup. I know that they really want Tuilagi to be on the ball, because I think England are putting a lot of faith in himself and Billy Vunipola to be able to do what they did in years past and carry strong, and for defences not to be able to cope with them, and for that to create space elsewhere on the pitch. So we'll have to see how well he goes there. He does have a great record against Ireland, and he seems to cause us more problems than others. Elliot Daly there on the left wing as well. Potential for him to be a World Cup starter as well, I think. He's a decent player. He's probably not up to the heights that he was a few seasons ago, but still a really dangerous player. Halfbacks in, you got George Ford and Ben Youngs. Van Portfleet ruled out the Rugby World Cup. Very sad for him on that. Don't want to see any players missing the World Cup due to injury. And, when I saw it on Saturday, I was really worried that would happen. So now I think there's a scramble for that 9 jersey. So Youngs and Kerr going to battle out. I think it is Mitchell, I think, has come into the squad as well, right? To be maybe number 3 there as well. So there, I think really that number 9 jersey for grabs. George Ford, who I think is possibly England's best option at 10, but I honestly don't think he will be the starting 10 for the big games in the World Cup, other than other things happening, because generally what will happen is, I think Farrell, if he's available, depending on what happens with the World Rugby's appeal to the decision on his disciplinary hearing. But if Farrell is available, I think he starts 10. If Farrell plays badly, you'll have all the calls for Marcus Smith to have a go, and then Marcus Smith will get a go. And then by the time George Ford is actually considered at 10, it might be too late for England, because by that stage they will have been in trouble. But if Farrell is out, I think he has a much, out for, let's say, the first 3 games or something, I think Ford then has a much better chance of staking his claim for that 10 jersey. I think he will do a great job there, and I'm kind of, a bit worried about him being at 10 against us, actually. Front row then, we've got Ellis Genge, Jamie George and Will Stewart. So I think, looking at them, and then on the bench you got Theo Dan, Joe Marler and Kyle Sinclair. That could easily be the 6 front rows that will be in their 23 for big games in the Rugby World Cup. You could argue for Sinclair starting ahead of Stewart, but that kind of goes, I think with England, it kind of goes one way and the other depending on who gets penalised in the scrum. Second row then you got Maro Itoje and Dave Ribbons. So Itoje's nailed on for the Rugby World Cup. In terms of the squad, the squad is already picked, but as a starter as well. Ribbons, I think Chesham on the bench might actually be the starting partner for Itoje in the World Cup, but Ribbons has a chance now to stake a claim for that spot, or even as inclusion in matchday's 23s. Courtney Laws, I think, is going to be the starting 6 for the Rugby World Cup. For me, I've talked about before that I would rather play him in the second row, but he is playing as a 6 now. So you got to play him in the position that he is playing as a specialist. But I think he gives them more from the second row. But I can see why they're doing it, because they found it very hard to find an actual balanced combination in the back row there. So they have Laws, and I think Vunipola is going to be nailed on. Not because I think he's he's the only 8 in the squad for starters. Not that I think that he's the best option for them at 8 over other players who didn't go, but because I think, again, that Vunipola and Tuilagi thing of running hard and tying up defenders is something that they're gambling on. And then Ben Earl there at 7 could actually be the other starter there in that back row. Like, that's 2 starts he's had at least on the bounce now. On the bench then you got Ollie Chesham, as I said, is probably going to be a starter in the World Cup, I think. Jack Willis will get a chance to maybe battle out with Earls for that starter position. Others will put their hands up as well. Got Danny Kerr in that battle with Youngs, I think, for starting 9, and then Mitchell could be like a bolter coming, if you want to see something different and fresh at 9. Marcus Smith, the guy, I think he's got tons of skills, but it's a case of everything that he does well gets hyped up beyond where it should be, but every time that he makes a mistake as well, explode up completely out of proportion too. So he writes kind of headlines for the press, and I think once you start getting into the World Cup and it's non-rugby specialist papers, as it were, or journalists covering it, then he's going to be built up to be knocked down, I think, and it's kind of sad for him. Ollie Lawrence, as I said, he could be a starter in the centres in the Rugby World Cup, but I think Tuilagi is the only centre who, at this stage at least, looks like he's definitely going to be a starter, and then it's up to the others to prove that they can maybe partner himself and Marchant getting that chance. Now, whether it will be, Marchant coming off for Lawrence or Tuilagi coming off for Lawrence, we'll have to see later on. So those are the two teams, two very strong teams. England, they beat Wales there at the weekend, despite having, so many yellow cards and then Owen Farrell's red card as well. They look like they're kind of struggling to click in their back line. Hopefully it's not, against us that they actually do click. And, for me, from Ireland, in terms of our performance, what I want to see is not just a win. I want to see a performance against England. And the reason for that is because in the build up to the last Rugby World Cup, like Ireland were kind of, they started through the Six Nations, weren't really good there. England really figured them out. And then I think we had a couple of wins against Wales back to back in the warm-ups that kind of said to you, well, maybe the Six Nations was just a blip and maybe we're okay going into the World Cup. And then we played England and England just destroyed us, demolished us. And it felt at that stage that, I thought, we are in absolute trouble now in this Rugby World Cup. If we get out of the pool, I was feeling at that stage we'd be lucky. We're not going to get beyond the quarterfinal because, unless we can actually rediscover form, because that made it very clear that Ireland were nowhere near the form that they were in the previous year where they looked so good, and England just showed that team there was a pattern or like a plan that you could follow and you would beat Ireland, and that made it very, very scary. I think Ireland team now under Farrell are more adaptable than that, the Joe Schmidt team. But that's why I want to see a performance, not just a win against England. And it's not a case of I want us to destroy England or anything like that because they're England. I just want to see Ireland putting a confidence building performance in there that shows you that, listen, we knocked the rust off now and we're actually ready to get into that Rugby World Cup. And, but we'll have to see what happens at the weekend. Let me know, what you think of the two teams, who you think is going to win, and, what you think as well about, certain combinations in the team too.